The fluorescent lights of the diner flickered as Rachel Morrison wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that evening. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and she could feel the beginning of another headache creeping up the base of her skull. Through the large windows, she watched the rain pour down on the nearly empty parking lot, creating small rivers that rushed toward the storm drains. It was nearly 11 o'clock, and she still had to pick up her daughter from her neighbor's apartment before midnight. "Table 4 needs a refill," called out Marcus, the night cook, from the kitchen window. Rachel grabbed the coffee pot and made her way to the corner booth, where an elderly couple sat sharing a piece of apple pie. As she poured their coffee, she caught sight of her reflection in the window. 28 years old, but looking closer to 35, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her green eyes that no amount of concealer could hide anymore. 3 years had passed since Danny walked out, leaving her 6 months pregnant with nothing but a stack of unpaid bills and a broken heart. Rachel had learned quickly that single motherhood was a relentless marathon with no finish line in sight. Between her day job at the hospital as a medical records clerk and her night shifts at Joe's Diner, she barely had time to sleep, let alone maintain any semblance of a social life. Her daughter, 5-year-old Mia, was her entire world, but Rachel couldn't shake the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companion. The bell above the door chimed, and Rachel looked up to see a man entering, his dark jacket soaked through from the rain. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends and striking blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. There was something about the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, observant but not intrusive. "Sit anywhere you'd like," Rachel called out, forcing a smile despite her fatigue. The man nodded and chose a booth near the window, sliding into the worn vinyl seat with an ease that suggested he was comfortable in places like this. Rachel grabbed a menu and a glass of water, making her way over to him. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice warm and tinged with genuine concern as he noticed her exhausted expression. "Is it that obvious?" Rachel replied with a self-deprecating laugh. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee and whatever pie you've got left. I'm not picky." He smiled, and Rachel felt something unexpected flutter in her chest. She pushed the feeling away immediately. She didn't have time for complications, especially not the romantic kind. "Apple or cherry?" "Surprise me." Over the following weeks, the man, who introduced himself as James Cooper, became a regular fixture at the diner. He always came in late, usually around 10:30, and always sat at the same booth. Rachel learned that he worked at an auto repair shop across town, often pulling late hours to finish jobs. His hands bore the evidence of his trade, calloused and occasionally marked with grease stains that never quite washed out completely. "My car broke down last month," Rachel mentioned one evening as she refilled his coffee. "The transmission just gave out. I've been taking the bus ever since, which adds another hour to my commute." James looked up from his pie, concern evident in his expression. "What kind of car?" "A 2008 Honda Civic. It's been on its last legs for a while now. The repair shop quoted me $3,000, which I definitely don't have." "Bring it by Miller's Auto Shop on 5th Street, James said, pulling out a business card and writing something on the back. "Ask for me. I'll take a look at it, see if I can help you out." Rachel hesitated. She'd learned to be wary of men offering help, knowing that nothing in life came without strings attached, but there was something genuine about James that made her trust him, despite her better judgment. 2 days later, she had her neighbor tow the Honda to Miller's Auto Shop. The place was larger than she'd expected, with multiple bays and several mechanics working on various vehicles. James met her at the entrance, wearing navy blue coveralls with his name stitched on the pocket. He looked even more attractive covered in grease and holding a wrench than he did cleaned up at the diner. "Let me take a look," he said, gesturing for her to pop the hood. He spent 20 minutes examining the engine, occasionally making notes on a small pad. Finally, he straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Your transmission's shot, that's true, but I can rebuild it instead of replacing it. I'll do it on my own time, after hours. Parts will run you about $400, and I won't charge you for labor." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. "James, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "Everyone needs a hand sometimes, Rachel. Let me help." She agreed, And over the next 2 weeks, James worked on her car during his evening hours. Rachel started bringing him dinner from the diner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, whatever was left over from her shift. They'd sit in the garage's small break room, talking about everything and nothing. She learned that he'd grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home until he aged out of the system at 18. He'd put himself through technical school while working multiple jobs, eventually landing at Miller's auto shop. "What about you?" James asked one evening, his eyes soft in the dim light of the break room. "How'd you end up juggling 2 jobs and raising a daughter alone?" Rachel told him about Danny, about the promises that turned to lies, about coming home from work to find him gone with half their belongings and all their savings. She told him about the fear she'd felt, 7 months pregnant and facing eviction, about the kindness of strangers who'd helped her get back on her feet. She'd never been this open with anyone since Danny left, but something about James made her feel safe. "You're stronger than you think," James said quietly. "Mia's lucky to have you as her mum." The following Saturday, James finished the car. Rachel brought Mia with her to pick it up, and she watched her daughter's eyes light up when James knelt down to her level and asked about the stuffed rabbit she was clutching. "This is Mr. Hops," Mia explained seriously. "He's very old. Mommy says he was hers when she was little." "Well, Mr. Hops looks very wise," James replied with equal seriousness. "I bet he's seen a lot of adventures." As Rachel drove away that afternoon, her car running smoothly for the first time in months, she glanced in the rearview mirror to see James standing in the parking lot, watching them leave. Mia chattered excitedly from her car seat about the nice man who fixed our car, and Rachel felt something shift in her chest, a dangerous warmth that felt suspiciously like hope. Over the next month, James became a fixture in their lives. He started joining them for Sunday morning pancakes at the diner during Rachel's break, and Mia would regale him with stories about kindergarten and her best friend, Sophie. He never pushed for more, never pressured Rachel into anything she wasn't ready for, and that patience made her fall for him even harder. One evening, as Rachel was closing up the diner, she overheard 2 men in suits talking in hushed tones at the counter. "I'm telling you it's him," one said. "James Miller. He owns half the real estate in this city. What the hell is he doing working in an auto shop in this neighborhood?" Rachel's blood ran cold. Miller's auto shop, James Cooper. She'd never put it together before. Her hands trembled as she finished wiping down tables, her mind racing. It couldn't be the same person, could it? The next morning, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, Mia eating cereal across from her while watching cartoons on the old television. Rachel's fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally typed, "James Miller, Billionaire." The search results loaded, and her stomach dropped. There he was, dozens of articles, photographs from charity galas, business journals profiling his success story. James Alexander Miller, founder and CEO of Miller Properties Group, estimated net worth of $2.3 billion. The photos showed him in expensive suits, standing beside politicians and celebrities, cutting ribbons at building openings. But it was unmistakably him, those same blue eyes, that same quiet confidence, though in these pictures he looked polished and powerful in a way that seemed completely foreign to the grease-stained mechanic she'd come to know. Rachel's hands shook as she scrolled through article after article. From foster care to fortune, the James Miller story. Real estate mogul expands empire with latest acquisition. Billionaire developer pledges millions to youth programs. The man who had rebuilt her transmission. The man who sat in a dingy diner eating day-old pie. The man who had gotten down on one knee to talk to her daughter about a stuffed rabbit. He was one of the wealthiest men in the state, and he'd been lying to her for months. "Mommy, are you okay?" Mia's small voice broke through her thoughts. Rachel looked up to see her daughter's concerned face, milk mustache still visible above her lip. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Rachel lied, forcing a smile. "Finish your breakfast. We need to leave for school soon." All day at the hospital, Rachel's mind churned. She felt humiliated, foolish, angry. Had this all been some kind of game to him? Did billionaires get bored and decide to play pretend with working-class people's lives? She thought about all the times she'd worried about money in front of him, all the times she'd accepted his help because she was desperate. The $400 for car parts, pocket change to him. Had he been laughing at her the whole time? By the time her shift ended, Rachel's hurt had crystallized into fury. She drove straight to Miller's auto shop, Her jaw clenched so tight it ached. The garage was busy with the afternoon rush, mechanics moving between vehicles like a well-choreographed dance. She spotted James in the far bay, his head under the hood of a pickup truck. "James!" she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the noise of pneumatic tools and running engines. He looked up, his face breaking into that warm smile that now felt like a betrayal. "Rachel, this is a surprise. Is everything okay with the—" "Cut the act," she interrupted, striding toward him. Several mechanics had stopped working, sensing the tension. "I know who you are. James Miller. Not James Cooper. Miller Properties Group. $2.3 billion. The smile faded from his face, replaced by something that looked like regret and resignation. He set down his wrench carefully and wiped his hands on a rag. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "Why? So you can spin more lies?" Rachel's voice cracked, despite her attempts to stay angry. "I trusted you. I let you into my daughter's life. Was this all just some kind of entertainment for you? See how the poor people live? Rachel, please." James took a step toward her, but she backed away. "Let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been playing dress-up while I've been killing myself working 2 jobs? That you watch me stress about money while you could have written a check for more than I'll earn in my entire lifetime?" Tears were streaming down her face now, and she hated herself for crying in front of him. "Did you laugh about it with your rich friends? The desperate single mum who actually believed you were just a mechanic? It's not like that." James's voice was quiet, but firm. "This shop, I built it before everything else. It's where I started. I still work here because it's the only place where people treat me like a regular person instead of a bank account." "How noble of you," Rachel said bitterly. "Meanwhile, I'm scraping together change to buy my daughter new shoes, and you're watching like it's some kind of documentary." "I never meant to hurt you." James ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "When I met you that first night at the diner, you didn't know who I was. You treated me like a normal person. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How exhausting it is to never know if people like you for who you are or what you have?" "Poor you," Rachel shot back. "It must be so hard being a billionaire." "You want to know why I didn't tell you?" James's voice rose slightly, frustration creeping in. "Because I knew this would happen. I knew that the second you found out, everything would change. And I was right, wasn't I? Look at us now." Rachel shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. "You should have told me. You should have given me the choice. Would you have let me help with your car if you'd known?" The question hung in the air between them. Rachel opened her mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Because he was right. If she'd known he was a billionaire, she never would have accepted his help. She would have seen it as charity, as pity, and her pride would have gotten in the way. "That's what I thought," James said softly when she remained silent. "Rachel, I care about you. I care about Mia. These past months have been the happiest I've had in years, because I got to be just James, not James Miller, CEO, not James Miller who everyone wants something from, just James, who fixes cars and eats pie at a diner." "But that's not who you are," Rachel whispered. "That's not your real life, isn't it?" James gestured around the garage. "I'm here 4 days a week. I still do the work. This place, these people, they're as real as anything else in my life, more real than most of it." Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need time to think. I just need space." She turned and walked away before he could respond, her vision blurred with tears. Behind her, she heard one of the mechanics say something and James's low response, but she couldn't make out the words over the roaring in her ears. The next 2 weeks were torture. James didn't come to the diner, and Rachel told herself she was relieved, but she found herself looking up every time the bell chimed, her heart sinking when it wasn't him. Mia asked about him constantly. "When is James coming over? Can we see James? Does James still like us?" And each question felt like a knife in Rachel's chest. She tried to move on, to focus on work and her daughter, but everything reminded her of him. The car that ran smoothly because of his skilled hands, the coffee maker he'd noticed was broken and had replaced without fanfare. The book of children's stories he'd bought for Mia, claiming he'd found it at a garage sale when Rachel now knew he'd probably ordered it from some expensive boutique. Her neighbor, Patricia, a woman in her 60s who sometimes watched Mia, finally cornered her one evening. "You're miserable, honey. And that little girl keeps asking about a man named James. Want to talk about it?" Over tea, Rachel spilled the entire story. Patricia listened without interruption, her weathered face thoughtful. When Rachel finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Let me ask you something," Patricia finally said. "Before you knew about the money, were you happy?" "Yes," Rachel admitted, "happier than I'd been in years." "And do you think he was happy?" Rachel thought about James's smile, the way his shoulders relaxed when he was with them, the genuine joy in his eyes when Mia showed him her drawings. "Yes." "Then what's the real problem here? That he has money or that he didn't tell you about it?" "He lied to me." "Did he?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Or did he just not volunteer information? Did you ask him how much money he had?" Rachel frowned. "Of course not. That would be rude." "Exactly. So he didn't lie. He just let you make assumptions." Patricia reached across and patted her hand. "Honey, I've been around long enough to know that good men are rare. Men who'll rebuild a transmission, play with a little girl and look at a tired waitress like she's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. Even rarer. Maybe ask yourself why the money matters so much." That night, after putting Mia to bed, Rachel lay awake staring at the ceiling. Patricia's words echoed in her mind. Why did the money matter? Was it really about the deception or was it about something else? She thought about Danny, who'd promised her the world and delivered nothing but heartbreak. She thought about her father, who'd walked out when she was 10, leaving her mother to raise 3 kids alone. She thought about every man who'd ever let her down, every promise that had turned to dust. And then she thought about James. Not James Miller, the billionaire, but James who'd sat in a break room eating leftover meatloaf, who'd listened to her stories without judgment, who'd treated her daughter with genuine kindness. The money didn't change any of that. It didn't make those moments less real, but it did change the power dynamic between them, and that scared her more than anything. Because how could she ever be his equal? How could she ever contribute anything meaningful to his life when he had everything money could buy? Rachel was restocking napkin dispensers during the lunch rush when she heard raised voices near the entrance. She looked up to see a woman in an elegant cream-colored suit standing at the hostess station, her posture radiating displeasure. The woman was perhaps 45, with perfectly styled auburn hair and the kind of jewelry that didn't come from department stores. "I'm looking for Rachel Morrison," the woman said, her tone clipped and precise. "I was told she works here." Rachel's stomach tightened with apprehension. She set down the napkins and approached cautiously. "I'm Rachel. Can I help you?" The woman's sharp grey eyes assessed her from head to toe, and Rachel felt acutely aware of her stained apron and flyaway hair. "I'm Victoria Hartley, James Miller's business partner and advisor. We need to talk." They sat in a corner booth, and Victoria ordered nothing, folding her hands on the table with the air of someone used to being in control. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her coffee mug. "I'll be direct," Victoria began. "I've known James for 15 years. I was there when he built his first property, and I've watched him grow his empire. He's brilliant, driven, and one of the most generous people I know. He's also been taken advantage of more times than I can count." "I'm not trying to take advantage of him," Rachel said defensively. "Perhaps not consciously," Victoria replied, her voice softening slightly. "But James is worth billions, Miss Morrison. You're a single mother working 2 jobs. The optics alone are problematic. There are people who would see you as a gold digger, who would question your motives." Rachel felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I didn't even know who he was until 2 weeks ago." "I know. That's actually what concerns me most." Victoria leaned forward. "James comes here to escape his real life. He plays mechanic, pretends he's just a regular guy, but that's not sustainable. He has responsibilities, board meetings, investor relations, property developments across 6 states. He can't keep living this double life." "I never asked him to," Rachel said, her voice tight. "No, but your presence encourages it. James hasn't attended a board meeting in 3 weeks. He's turning down opportunities, avoiding social obligations, all because he'd rather be here, in this world." Victoria's expression was almost sympathetic. "I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying that sometimes good people are wrong for each other. You're from different worlds, Miss Morrison, and trying to bridge that gap will only hurt you both, and your daughter, in the long run." After Victoria left, Rachel went through the rest of her shift on autopilot. The woman's words circled her mind like vultures. Different worlds. Gold digger. Unsustainable. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe she was being selfish, holding on to something that could never work. That evening, Rachel picked up Mia from Patricia's apartment. As they walked the 3 blocks home, Mia chattered about her day, but stopped suddenly on the sidewalk. "Mommy, why are you sad?" Rachel knelt down to her daughter's level. "I'm just tired, baby." "Is it because of James?" Mia's brown eyes, so much like Rachel's own, were too perceptive. "I miss him. He was nice. He made you smile." Rachel pulled her daughter into a hug, fighting back tears. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people come into our lives for a little while, and then they have to go. But why?" "Because sometimes that's just how it works." The next afternoon, Rachel's phone rang during her shift at the hospital. It was an unknown number, but something made her answer. "Rachel, it's James." His voice was strained. "I need your help. It's Mia." Rachel's blood turned to ice. "What about Mia? What happened?" "She's okay. She's safe," James said quickly. "But she ran away from Patricia's. She showed up at the auto shop about 20 minutes ago. She won't tell me why, and Patricia is frantic. Can you come?" Rachel left work immediately, her supervisor grudgingly allowing her to go. The drive to the shop felt endless. When she burst through the door, she found Mia sitting in the break room with James, her daughter's eyes red from crying. "Mia!" Rachel swept her into her arms. "Baby, what were you thinking? You can't just leave without telling anyone. You scared me to death." "I wanted to see James," Mia sobbed into her shoulder. "You said people have to go away sometimes, and I didn't want him to go away. I wanted to ask him to stay." Rachel's heart shattered. She looked up at James over her daughter's head and saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. He'd been sitting cross-legged on the floor to be at Mia's level, and there were tear tracks on his grease-smudged face. "Sweetheart, it's more complicated than that," Rachel began. But James interrupted. "No, it's not." He stood up slowly. "Rachel, can we talk, please?" Really talk this time. Patricia arrived moments later to take Mia for ice cream, giving them privacy. Rachel and James stood in the empty break room, the air heavy with everything unsaid. "Victoria came to see me," James said. "She told me about your conversation at the diner." "She was right," Rachel said quietly. "We're from different worlds." "That's bullshit." The profanity was so unexpected from him that Rachel's eyes widened. "I'm sorry, but it is. You know what my world is, Rachel? It's empty. It's people who want something from me, who see dollar signs instead of a person. It's fake smiles and calculated conversations, and never knowing who genuinely cares about you." He moved closer, his voice passionate. "When I met you, you didn't see James Miller, billionaire. You saw a guy who was having a bad day and offered him coffee and pie. You told me about your life, your struggles, your daughter. You were real. And every moment I've spent with you has been real. But I can't give you what someone from your world could," Rachel said, tears spilling over. "I can't go to your galas or understand your business. I'm just a waitress with a 5-year-old and more bills than money. Do you think I care about any of that?" James took her hands in his. "Rachel, I've dated models and socialites and women with trust funds. They were all beautiful and accomplished, and I was miserable with every single one of them because they didn't look at me the way you do. They didn't make me laugh the way you do. They didn't make me want to be better. Your business partner thinks I'm a gold digger. Victoria is overprotective, but she's wrong about you. I know she's wrong because I've seen who you are. I've watched you work 2 jobs to provide for your daughter. I've seen you tip the busboy your entire tip because he mentioned his mother was sick. I've heard you talk about your dreams, not for mansions or cars or jewelry, but for stability and security, and being able to take Mia to the zoo without worrying about the admission fee." Rachel laughed through her tears. "Those are pretty small dreams for a billionaire's girlfriend." "You're not my girlfriend," James said, and Rachel's heart sank until he continued. "Not yet, anyway, but I want you to be. I want to take you on actual dates. I want to meet Mia's teachers and help her with homework. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up knowing you're there. And yes, I want to help you, not because I pity you, but because that's what people do when they care about each other." "James, I'm not asking you to quit your jobs or move into my penthouse," he interrupted. "I'm asking you to let me be part of your life, as I am. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just me. The guy who likes fixing cars and eating diner pie and listening to Mia's stories about kindergarten." "What about your real life?" Rachel asked. "The board meetings and developments and all of that." "That's my work, not my life. You and Mia, you're my life. If I have to choose, I choose you." Every time. He cupped her face gently. But I'm hoping I don't have to choose. I'm hoping you'll take a chance on us figuring out how to make both worlds work. Rachel closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands against her skin. Every practical part of her brain was screaming warnings, listing all the reasons this couldn't work. But her heart, her treacherous, hopeful heart, was louder. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. What if Victoria's right? What if people think I'm with you for your money? Then they don't know you, James said firmly. And their opinions don't matter. The only opinions that matter are yours, mine, and Mia's. Rachel opened her eyes and found him watching her with such tenderness that it took her breath away. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to date a billionaire. Good thing you're not dating a billionaire, James said with a small smile. You're dating James, the mechanic who's terrible at keeping his work shirts clean and who always orders the same pie. Despite everything, Rachel laughed. You're impossible. Is that a yes? She thought about Mia's tears, about the emptiness of the past 2 weeks, about how right it felt when James was around. She thought about Patricia's question, before you knew about the money, were you happy? Yes, Rachel said, but we're taking this slow, and you're going to your board meetings. Deal. James pulled her into his arms, and Rachel let herself melt into his embrace. For the first time in weeks, the tightness in her chest eased. There's something else, James said after a moment. Something I need to tell you. Rachel pulled back slightly, anxiety flickering. What? The auto shop. Miller's auto shop. It's not just where I work. I own it. I've owned it for 12 years. It was my first business before everything else took off. He paused. And I'm planning to franchise it, create opportunities for mechanics from disadvantaged backgrounds to own their own shops. I've been working on the business plan for months. Rachel stared at him. So you really are a mechanic? I really am a mechanic, James confirmed. The real estate empire came later, kind of by accident. I bought a building to house the shop, then started buying more properties. But this, he gestured around the garage, this has always been my foundation. You're full of surprises, James Miller. Is that a bad thing? Rachel stood on her toes and kissed him softly. Ask me again in a few months. 6 months later, Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror, smoothing down the fabric of her dress for the 10th time. It was a deep emerald green, simple but elegant, and had cost more than she'd ever spent on clothing in her life. James had taken her shopping, insisting she needed something special for tonight's charity gala. She'd argued, of course, but he'd countered that it was for his foundation's youth program fundraiser, and she was being honored as a volunteer coordinator. That had been his compromise. Rachel had refused to quit either of her jobs, despite James's gentle suggestions that she didn't need to work herself to exhaustion anymore. Instead, they'd found a middle ground. She'd reduced her diner shifts to weekends only and had started volunteering with James's foundation, helping to develop programs for single parents. It turned out her lived experience was invaluable in ways her lack of formal education wasn't. "Mommy, you look like a princess," Mia exclaimed from the doorway, her own dress a frothy confection of pink tulle. Patricia was taking her to a movie while Rachel and James attended the gala. "You look pretty beautiful yourself, sweet girl." Rachel knelt down carefully, mindful of her dress, and hugged her daughter. "Be good for Miss Patricia, okay?" "I will. Tell James I said hi." Mia kissed her cheek and bounded off, leaving a smudge of strawberry lip gloss that Rachel wiped away with a smile. The gala was held at the Grand Metropole Hotel, a glittering affair with crystal chandeliers and women in gowns that cost more than Rachel's car. She felt James's hand at the small of her back as they entered, steadying and reassuring. Over the past months, she'd learned to navigate these events, though she'd never quite feel comfortable in them. "You're doing great," James murmured in her ear as they made their way through the crowd. "Just remember, half these people are more nervous than you are. Hard to believe when they're wearing diamonds the size of my thumb." James laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Mrs. Pemberton over there, terrified of small talk. Judge Morrison has terrible social anxiety. Mr. Chen would rather be anywhere else." Rachel had learned that James had a gift for seeing beyond people's facades, perhaps because he wore one himself so often. In public, he was James Miller, billionaire philanthropist, shaking hands and making small talk with practiced ease. But in private, with her and Mia, He was just James, the man who still showed up at the auto shop 4 mornings a week, who made terrible pancakes but kept trying, who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Victoria Hartley approached them, her expression considerably warmer than their first meeting. Over the months, Rachel had won over James's business partner through sheer persistence and by proving she had no interest in James's bank account. Victoria had even apologized in her own stilted way, admitting she'd been wrong about Rachel's intentions. "The youth program presentation is in 20 minutes, Victoria said. "Rachel, are you ready?" Rachel's stomach flipped. "As ready as I'll ever be." She was scheduled to speak about the new mentorship program she'd helped design, pairing single parents with career counselors and providing childcare assistance. It was personal for her, born from her own struggles, and she'd poured her heart into making it work. When Rachel took the stage, she looked out at the sea of formal wear and sparkling jewelry, and for a moment, panic seized her. Then she found James's face in the crowd, his expression filled with such pride and encouragement that her nerves settled. "Good evening," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "6 months ago, I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and wondering how I was going to afford new shoes for my daughter. I was one unexpected expense away from financial catastrophe, and I felt completely alone." She spoke about the isolation of single parenthood, the exhaustion, the fear. She talked about the barriers that kept people trapped in poverty, lack of childcare, inflexible work schedules, the cost of education and training. And she presented the program they'd developed, explaining how it addressed each of these challenges. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Rachel returned to her seat beside James, her hands shaking with adrenaline. "You were incredible," James whispered, squeezing her hand. "I'm so proud of you." Later, as they danced to a slow song, Rachel rested her head against his chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being patient with me, for understanding why I needed to do this my way." James pulled back slightly to look at her. "Rachel, you're one of the strongest people I know. You didn't need rescuing. You just needed support. There's a difference." "I love you," Rachel said, the words still feeling new and precious. They'd said them before, but each time felt significant. "I love you too." James kissed her forehead. "Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about." Rachel's heart rate picked up. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just important." He led her away from the dance floor to a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights. "I've been thinking about franchising the auto shop like I mentioned before. I remember. How's that going?" "Good. Really good, actually. We're opening the first franchise location in 3 months. He paused, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "I want to offer you a position, not because of us, but because you're good at what you do. You understand people, you understand struggle, and you know how to create programs that actually help." Rachel stared at him. "James, I'm not qualified." "You're more qualified than anyone with an MBA who's never struggled to put food on the table," he interrupted. "I'm not asking you to be a mechanic. I'm asking you to help develop the community outreach programs for each franchise location. Fair salary, benefits, flexibility for Mia. What do you think?" Rachel's mind raced. It would mean leaving both her jobs, stepping fully into James's world. But it would also mean using her experiences to help others, creating the kind of support system she desperately needed years ago. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need." 2 weeks later, Rachel gave her notice at both the hospital and the diner. Joe, the diner owner, hugged her and told her she'd always have a place there if she needed it. Her co-workers at the hospital threw her a small party, genuinely happy for her new opportunity. Her first day at Miller Properties Group was terrifying. She had her own office, small but professional, and a team of 3 people reporting to her. But James had been right. Her perspective was valuable. Within months, she'd helped design programs that were being implemented across all of James's properties, from job training initiatives to affordable childcare partnerships. One Saturday morning, 9 months after that first conversation at the gala, Rachel woke to find James already up, making his terrible pancakes in her kitchen. They'd maintained separate apartments, taking their relationship slowly for Mia's sake, but he stayed over more weekends than not now. "Mommy, James, look what I drew." Mia came running in, waving a piece of paper. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one, Above them she'd written, "My family," in careful kindergarten letters. Rachel felt her eyes fill with tears. James set down the spatula and knelt beside Mia. "That's beautiful, kiddo. Can I keep it?" "It's for both of you," Mia explained seriously, "because you're both my family now." After breakfast, James took Mia to the park, giving Rachel some rare time alone. She used it to call her mother, who she'd been gradually rebuilding a relationship with over the past year. "He sounds wonderful, honey," her mother said warmly. "When do I get to meet him?" "Soon," Rachel promised. "Maybe next month?" After hanging up, Rachel walked through her apartment, still small, still modest, but now filled with signs of their blended life. Mia's drawings covered the refrigerator. James's jacket hung by the door. A framed photo from the gala sat on the mantel, showing them both laughing at something off camera. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "Mia wants ice cream. Can we bring you some?" Rachel smiled and typed back, "Always." That evening, after Mia was in bed, Rachel and James sat on her small balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. James had been quiet all afternoon, and Rachel recognized the signs of him working up to something. "What's on your mind?" she asked, lacing her fingers through his. "I've been thinking about the future," James began. "About what I want my life to look like." Rachel's heart started to pound. "And?" "And I want it to look like this. You, me, Mia. Maybe a house with a yard where Mia can play. Maybe more kids someday if you want that. I want Sunday morning pancakes and bedtime stories and helping with homework." He turned to face her fully. "I want to build a life with you, Rachel. A real one. Not in separate apartments, not half-committed. All in." "James, I'm not proposing." "Not yet," he said quickly. "I know you want to take things slow, and I respect that. But I want you to know where my head is, where my heart is. You and Mia, you're my home. Everything else is just details." Rachel felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were purely happy tears. "I want that too," she whispered. "I'm not scared anymore. Or maybe I am, but I'm more excited than scared. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." James pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky. 3 months later, Rachel stood in the backyard of a modest but beautiful house in a good school district, watching Mia chase butterflies through the grass. James came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. Rachel thought about everything that had led them here, the broken-down car, the late-night conversations, the fear and doubt and eventual trust. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, exhausted and alone, barely surviving, and she thought about who she was now, confident, purposeful, loved, incredibly, she said, turning in his arms to kiss him. "Thank you for being patient with me. For letting me find my way to this. Thank you for taking a chance on a mechanic in a diner," James replied with a smile. "Best decision I never knew you were making." From inside the house, they heard Mia calling for them. "Mommy, James, come see what I found." Hand in hand, they walked back to the house, their house now, all three of them. It wasn't the mansion James could have afforded, but it was perfect for them. And as Rachel stepped through the door into their home, she realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfection, not wealth,